Hey guys, it's Brindley. I think we're up and running. Gosh, I have never been so nervous for a live. I've got like butterflies and um, it's just crazy. So, some of you might have seen my post earlier today. I have decided to start a series on Monday nights called Breakthrough with Brindley. And it's going to be about personal development, professional development, everything from time blocking and building a team and building a business to self-worth and mindset and just sharing things that I learn, sharing things that I hear from others, sharing things that I do in my research to teach and speak. And I thought there was no better way to start than to tell my story. I've done this publicly once before, and it was on the One Thing podcast with Jeff Woods, episode 78. It was about 2 years ago, and it was the first time that I had ever shared it publicly. And I've had a few people recently say, you need to share it more. Your whole life mission is to use that story to help save lives, to motivate and inspire, to bring about, to help people reach their maximum potential and bring about positive change. And I lost myself in the last year. And I haven't been doing that at the highest level. And so that's part of starting this series, is to get back to my North Star and get back to who I am as a person and what my purpose is and what my story means to me. So the reason I'm doing this is mainly because I remember the power that came with owning my story rather than it owning me. For a long time, probably for the first, I would say, good 3 to 4 years, my story owned me. I felt guilty about it. I felt kind of like the scarlet letter feeling, that I was tainted because of it, that I was not a great person. And then as I started to recover and started to share it more, and when I shared it publicly, I started owning it. And when I started owning my story was when I truly could live and start to help others. And my story is not one of, there's a lot of people that things happen to them in life that they can't control, and they come back from it and they bounce back. People that, fight cancer and diseases and loss. And my story is not like that. My story is one that I could control. And I screwed up. I screwed up big time. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in our series is mistake recovery. Mistake recovery from a personal standpoint of when we make mistakes and how we can recover from them and how we can use them to help others, yet also in our businesses. How do we recover from mistakes? We all make them. We all make them with our customers. We disappoint our customers. We disappoint our team leaders. We disappoint our team members, our leadership, our mentors. So how do we recover from that? So my journey really starts, I was raised single parent, only child. My mother, I was a product of the 70s. She had a lot of fun in the 70s. I don't know who my dad is. So she did everything that she could as a single mom to raise me the best that she could, on a very limited budget. My grandparents were a great help. We were very poor when I was young. I remember my mom telling stories of she would steal soap from my grandparents' trash can and rub them together so that we would have a full bar of soap, because she was too humble to ask my grandparents to buy soap for us. And, there was a lot of, we didn't have a lot, yet there was a lot of love. And she did everything in her power to fight for me. I never really felt like I ever wanted for anything. When I was born, she was making $12,000 a year as a secretary at Raymond James when they first started. And when I graduated from college, she was, a senior vice president of institutional sales for Raymond James and was doing really well for herself. And unfortunately, my senior year of high school, I grew up strong in my faith. So I grew up a Southern Baptist, and I grew up in the Southern Baptist culture of very fire and brimstone. If you act this way, you're going to heaven. And if you act this way, you're going to hell. or this way. And not saying that that's a wrong way to worship. Everybody should be free to worship the way that they want. It's just the impact that it had on me as I would go through and life would start to happen, it would have a pretty big impact. And so my senior year of high school, April of my senior year, my uncle was shot at his home through his bedroom window by his girlfriend's son that was my age at the time. And there's no need to go into those stories, yet that incident really was a turning point in my life. My family had to clean the home up. And so as a senior, getting ready to go to college, freedom for the first time, I find myself scrubbing my uncle's blood out of tile floor. And it was when I started smoking. It was when I started drinking. It was when I started doing all of the things that would allow me not to feel. My family separated. My grandparents divorced after 48 years of marriage. Part of the family sided with the grandma, part of the family sided with the grandpa, and it just disseminated. And I went off to college and went to college 2 months later and was free as a bird, had no curfew, had an allowance. As long as I made good grades, the money kept coming. And I just found myself going down a spiral of filling this God-sized hole of my family and the hurt and the pain with everything that was not good for me. And I would continue that life for a very long time. Went to college when I was 23. Had my first not so good run-in with the law when I was 21, and would continue to have troubles throughout my 20s. Graduated from college and was fortunate enough to move to Manhattan and live in New York for 7 years and work in the financial industry. And did my diseases and my alcoholism would follow me to New York, and I would just continue to live a life of where I would wake up in the mornings and I didn't like myself. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the world that I was in. I wanted everybody else's life. I would constantly compare my insides to everybody else's outsides, and everybody had a life that I wanted that I didn't have. And ended up meeting someone in New York and getting engaged in my late 20s and moved back to Florida. Got fired from my first job because of my drinking and started in 2011 working for Keller Williams here in Largo, Florida for Nikki Ubaldini. And at this point in my life, I'm 32 years old. I'm back home. I've done some pretty cool things in my life. I lived in Manhattan. I worked in country club membership sales in Texas, did some really neat things. And I'm back home at 32 with nothing to show for it, except I'm drinking at this point very heavily and self-medicating in all sorts of ways. And Nikki hired me. I decided that I wanted to go into real estate, basically because I was unemployable. I didn't want a boss. And Nikki and her team leader at the time hired me to be their director of agent services for Keller Williams. That was in November of 2011. And I would continue this lifestyle, and I hit it pretty well the first couple months, and then I got in some trouble, and Nikki was graceful enough to allow me to keep my job the first time. And I went to my first family reunion in February of 2012. I went to the team leader and I said, it was in Orlando, so it was only 2 hours away. And I said, I really want to go to this family reunion. If I pay for half of it, will you allow me to go? And she, so great. I'm so grateful for Linda Straight for allowing me to go to that family reunion, because that family reunion changed my life. I, for the first time, walked into a place, and I remember walking in to family reunion and everyone was so happy. And they were so excited to be there. And they were happy I was there. And everyone was hugging and connecting. And all you heard was God family business. And I realized at that event that this God-sized hole that I had been filling with alcohol and men and all of these things, trying to feel better and make the pain stop, was because God family business was missing in my life. And so I went home from that event, and I remember sitting on my back porch and crying out to God and saying, I don't want to live, but I don't want to die. And I don't know how to get out of where I am. I am living with a man that I don't love. He makes sure that the bills are paid, and I make sure he is clothed and fed. I'm miserable. At this point in my life, I am waking up every morning and I'm drinking just to get through the day and just to get through the way that I feel and the hurt and the pain. And so I cried out to God and I said, I don't want to live, but I don't want to die. And I believe that God speaks. Well, first he whispers, and then he speaks, and then he yells, and then he roars. And I had had many whispers. I had had many talks. I had had many yells. And my roar came Memorial Day weekend of 2012, May 27th. I went to a friend's house and we had a lot of wine, and they didn't know how much wine I had had to drink, yet tried to take my keys and they were not able to. And on my way home, in the middle of a blackout, I made a U-turn in front of a motorcycle. And for 2 days, I thought he was dead, and I thought that I was going to prison for a really long time. I got out of jail the next morning and I called the police station to find out where my car was, and they said that it was being held in investigation of a vehicular homicide. And I remember looking at my mom and hanging up the phone and saying, what am I going to do if I killed someone? And my whole life would change that day, my whole life. I'll celebrate 8 years of not having a drink or anything else May of this year. A few agents, and the gentleman didn't die. And I believe that it's only by the grace of God that he didn't die that night, because God knew that I would be more useful out here than I would be behind bars. And ever since that day, I have made amends to that man by staying sober and helping other people get sober and stay sober. It's part of the reason that I'm so vulnerable and so open about my mistakes and about who I am and what I do, and, you know, not being proud of the moments when I'm not my best. And because if I can even just change one life through my vulnerability, then it's worth it, because every day here is a gift. And God gave me a gift. He gave me a second chance. Nikki had to let me go at that time. And so I lost my job. I was facing 15 years in prison, 2 felonies, and a lot of fines. I decided at that moment to leave the man that I was with, because I wanted to make a lot of changes in my life. And I knew that it was going to be a hard journey. I had to first and foremost find how to support myself. And for the first time in my life, I had to become self-supporting. So I had to figure out how to do that. And a few agents, Keller Williams agents, and this is what makes our company so amazing, is that when one of us is in trouble, whether it's self-inflicted or it's not, our culture is to help, and our culture is to be there. And there were agents that really put their arms around me. And it was when E-Edge came out and they decided to hire me to do some admin work for them and get their E-Edges set up. And I would strap my laptop to the back of my Schwinn bike cruiser. Bike cruiser, if you've ever ridden one, it doesn't have shocks, doesn't have brakes. And I would bike sometimes 40, 50 miles a day from agent to agent, doing their E-Edge, building websites, doing SEO. And there were days I didn't want to get out of bed. There were days I didn't want to do it anymore. It was hard. It was really hard. And I'm just so grateful that those agents allowed me the opportunity to rebuild. And so over the next couple of years, I would build my first company, which was an independent transaction management company. And I built that company out of necessity. An agent came to me one day and said, hey, will you do transaction management for me? And I said, I've never done it, but if you want to teach me, I'll be more than happy to. And so I had them record how to do transaction management from contract to close. And I would listen to that recording. And that's how I learned how to process contracts. And I remember just at that time in my life, it was just do whatever you can do to survive. Whatever you can do to survive and not drink, and you're going to be okay. And I would just get up every morning and I would do the next right thing. And I just, I had to learn how to live again. I had to learn how to be the person that God intended me to be before life happened and I decided to cope with it in a way that wasn't healthy. Um, and it was a lot of hard work. It was simple, but it wasn't easy. And I remember the reason I said Heidi earlier is that one day I was on my bike and it was hot. It was middle of summer in Florida. And I called her and I was on my way to figure out how to get public health assistance. And if you've ever tried to get public health assistance, it's the system is crazy and it's like a treasure map. Like they send you to this building and then they say, no, you've got to go cross county and you've got to go here. And I'm on my bike and I'm doing all of this. And I called her and I'm like, I can't do it anymore. And I'm bawling on the side of the road. And I'm like, I just can't do it. I can't do it. This isn't worth it. This isn't worth it. I'm not doing it. And she said, Brindley, just think about how many people you're going to help with this story. And that was enough motivation to get me back on that bike and go. And I've been able to help so many women learn how to get public health assistance because of that day. And so I built this transaction management company, and I got a call one day that Nikki Ubaldini, my broker, didn't want me in her office. And I don't deal with gossip very well. Most of you that know me know that I'm honest almost to a fault. I'm very confrontational, probably too much, something I'm working on. It's probably my biggest blind spot, is my emotions and I don't mind. I'm very confrontational. I don't mind confrontation at all or conflict. And I reached out to Nikki and I said, hey, is this true? And she said, why don't you come in? And this was 3 years after she had let me go. And I think that day she had a different idea of what the meeting was going to be like. And for me, it was the opportunity to make amends to her for what I had caused in her business, 3 years earlier. And I remember she brought me in that day and we talked and I made my amends and I shared with her how much she meant to me. And she shared and mentored me in my business and invited me back in to support her agents. And again, our culture, right? Our culture is a culture of second chances. Our culture is a culture of forgiveness and grace. And we all screw up and we all, at times, our egos get out of control. And at times we lose ourselves and we make mistakes because we're entrepreneurs and it's what we do. And I remember just her loving me at a time when it was so hard to love myself and when I was going through such a hard time, and she gave me a second chance. And for that, I will forever be grateful to Nikki. And if it wasn't for Gary Keller, I wouldn't have had Nikki. If it wasn't for Gary Keller's vision, I wouldn't have Nikki. And so I would continue that business. And for most of you that know me, there's no hiding it. I am a DI with a very high adaptive C. So I'm a nerd. I spend my weekends in spreadsheets. I'm building out an entire system in Airtable right now. It's just what I enjoy doing. And at about 3.5 years, I was like, I'm not passionate about this. Yet I had a lot of people that worked for me that were. And so I worked at a deal in order to help these women have their own independent transaction management businesses to be able to work from home, be with some of them with their children. 2 of them are actually still in the business and flourishing. And going through that experience and coaching and consulting them into their own businesses gave me this passion to do it for others. And so I started looking into the support community and the real estate support community and transaction managers and assistants and operations. And I saw that there wasn't a lot out there for them. And there wasn't someone that really had their voice, that was a voice for them, that was going out and saying, hey, like, these people are the ninjas in your business. And what do we have for them at events? And what are we doing for them? And how are we pouring into them so that we can retain talent? And I would spend the next couple of years doing coaching and training for admin and operations. And, it's been some of the most rewarding times. I will say that there's been a lot of hard times in the last couple of years, the last year or two. I've learned and I've grown tremendously. I've probably grown more in the last 6 months than I've grown in 2 years. And I'm so excited to where I am today. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited for what I'm going to bring to the world through my experience and through my journey and through the mistakes that I've made. And um, I'm really looking forward to taking this journey with you guys every Monday night. The reason that I wanted to share my story tonight is because it's not easy. This is probably the most nervous I've ever been for a live, and I'm still in my head not telling myself that there's probably a couple hundred people out there that are going to watch this. Yet I want to inspire you to own your story, no matter what it is, and to share your story, because even if one person hears it and you can change one life, it makes your story worth it, and it makes everything that you've been through worth it. So get out there and share your story, and don't be afraid to share your story, whether it's good, bad, ugly. It's your story, and it's your fingerprint, and it's what makes you unique and what makes you different. I would love your input for our breakthrough with Brindley on Monday nights. If you have any topic you want me to cover, I love researching too. So if there's any topic that you may not have the time to research yourself, but you want me to cover it, let me know. There'll also be a blog coming and a website. My team wants these to be posted to my YouTube, so we'll be posting them to YouTube once I can figure all that out and have time. And I'll be taking you on my adventures with me. Some pretty exciting stuff coming up that I'm really excited to share with you guys, that I can show you that no matter where you've been in life, no matter what you've done, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter who you've hurt, no matter how much you've fallen and scraping your knees, that you can always get up, do you, and start over, and have grace. Have grace for yourself, have grace for others, and not to be afraid to admit, hey, I screwed up, and to realize that we're all human. For a lot of years, even after recovery, I was I was very judgmental, and I judged people. And I woke up recently and was like, who am I to judge? And that's really what inspired me to get back to this, is that I need to get back to be reminded of where I came from, and that it wasn't too long ago that somebody gave me a second chance. And so I hope this was helpful. If you want to reach out to me, you can private message me. You can also reach me at Brindley, Brindley, at brindleytucker.com, Brindley at brindleytucker.com. All I ask is that you share this so that others can hear it, and hopefully my story will impact, even if it's just one person, makes it all worthwhile. So I will see you guys next Monday, and please reach out, share topics that you want me to cover, and we will see you soon. Bye. Hey guys, it's Brindley. I think we're up and running. Gosh, I have never been so nervous for a live. I've got like butterflies, and it's just crazy. So some of you might have seen my post earlier today. I decided to start a series on Monday nights called Breakthrough with Brindley. And it's going to be about personal development, professional development, everything from time blocking and building a team and building a business to self-worth and mindset, and just sharing things that I learned, sharing things that I hear from others, sharing things that I do in my research to teach and speak. And I thought there was no better way to start than to tell my story. I've done this publicly once before, and it was on the One Thing podcast with Jeff Woods, episode 78. It was about 2 years ago, and it was the first time that I'd ever shared it publicly. And I've had a few people recently say you need to share it more. Your whole life mission is to use that story to help save lives, to motivate and inspire, to bring about, to help people reach their maximum potential and bring about positive change. And I lost myself in the last year. And I haven't been doing that at the highest level. And so that's part of starting this series, is to get back to my North Star and get back to who I am as a person and what my purpose is and what my story means to me. So the reason I'm doing this is mainly because I remember the